Hello once again, Tom Pope from Community and Social Change Radio on YouTube and Facebook, along with Glenn Greenwich, co-producer. We're talking today about how the community can best be helped by reducing crime. And actually, you can build a case that the Republicans are soft on crime. Yes, I said it. The Republicans are soft on crime. We have examples in reality of how to reduce crime. Why does crime develop? It develops because people are filled with anxiety, people are out of work, people face a lack of inspiration, gangs form, violence comes about from this. How do we counter that? Do we send squads of people in cars hunting down, looking for a possible problem? Or what about spending money on rec centers that stimulate the mind? What about the idea of helping people who are coming out of prison reconnect with society? If we do those things, along with adding social work people to help families in the community, we're actually reducing crime so we don't get to the violence that we're seeing in the area. What do you think, Glenn?
Well, absolutely. I think one of the mayor's plans when he cut the budget for the NYPD, he presented some community advocates that are groups that actually go out and meet with the gangs in some cases, or where gun violence has been active, so that there's no retaliation. Part of what they're looking to do is to interact and to prevent additional retaliation and trying to squelch whatever the, as they say on the street, whatever the beef was between the original parties that caused the shooting. Now, NYPD can't do that. They're not geared for that. That's not how they're perceived by the community and certainly by the gang members. So there's a need for that kind of advocacy to be able to go out and to, as you said, stop the crime at the source of it. We've had some discussions and we've had some articles on broken windows, and that whole broken windows doesn't work. And as you mentioned earlier, you talked about the anguish, frustration that people not having jobs. And so part of it is to use these community centers as places to advocate work, work training, work experience, work objectives, so that people are being set up to win by having a job. Because if the problem begins when you don't have a job, then you're looking for crime or some easy way to make money, and a lot of people get caught up in the glitz and the glamour of the big money.
So if we devote some funds that might have gone to such a center and take that away, and the center's not there, suddenly we're left with people who have to find some way to either occupy their time or deal with an economic crisis.
Right.
And they resort to crime because their backs are against the wall.
Absolutely. I was working with this this youth group in St. Albans, and one of the young men was out there selling drugs at one point in time, wanted to change his life. Um, so he was part of the program, and we talked about positive things and did a lot of work with the history, so that he knew who he was and who his people were in history. And he was very moved by the work that we did because he hadn't received any of that kind of training and conversation before. After the program was over, unfortunately, it was relayed to me that he got a woman pregnant, and he now couldn't find a job, was frustrated. Um, the jobs that he found um, wouldn't hire him because of his prior record, so on and so forth. And here's somebody who knew what to do, wanted to do the right thing, but because he needed to provide for a family now, he went back to selling drugs in the street. So, I mean, that's a perfect example of here's a guy who is committed to changing his life, but he now has a family. He's got to do something, and wasn't able to
It's
employ.
interesting that the person in the public might view this as, well, the person you're describing should not have done that. He's breaking the law. And yet, that same person in the public might be viewing another case of a CEO who decides to have a merger based on a phony product that is there only to make money for bonuses. And the person in the public sees a big difference between the two. We don't classify that necessarily as crime, and the CEO goes off scot-free. Whereas the other,
Get spanked on the hand, don't do it again, and be a good citizen.
the other part of your story makes me think of, there's an interesting fellow named Jason Edwards. He's an immigrant from Trinidad and Tobago. He's teaching teenagers, I think it's in Bed-Stuy, to do moko jumbo, the stilt dancing.
Oh, okay.
And he has a group of people that he's training for major festivals. Now, of course, this is a highlight in festivals in the Caribbean. And he's doing this in Brooklyn. Now, there are other programs like this around the America. I've seen one listed where they charge families $400 to learn. I don't know what Jason is charging. I have the feeling he's a community activist, so he might not be charging much or anything.
Right.
But he described in one interview that he sees a great sense of accomplishment on the part of the teenagers who are getting involved. Now, that is keeping this teenager away from crime. What if Jason needed funds?
Exactly.
Should we spend that money instead to a police mentality that is simply going to put away a teenager in a jail cell for the 10 to 20 years, where that teenager then becomes a hardened criminal?
Well, you hit it the nail on the head, because the program, Jason, the other programs are normally self-funded. And in this day and age, a not-for-profit being self-funded, you're always trying to hustle to pay for just to keep the overhead of the organization, much less to be able to produce programs. So if we as the public can divert some of those funds and allocate them to these kind of programs, I think that communities and societies would be so much better off, because you're now provided. So we're talking about this young man. If he had a job that he could go to, that he would feel proud of, and had the self-respect and could feed his family, he would be doing that. But right in this moment in time, he didn't have the choices available to him were slim to none, and had him go back to selling drugs on the street. I'm not advocating that he should do that. Certainly, none of us are saying that. However, the reality of life is that you've got to be able to take care of your family, feed your family, do what it takes to take care of your loved ones.
So in other words, every time we cut some funding for a program like this, we're virtually saying we're not serious about fighting crime.
No, we're not. Absolutely not.
If we're conscious about spending more money so that police can actually detain people and set them against the community, then we're being soft on crime because we're helping crime get larger.
Absolutely.
A fascinating show on, I believe it's ABC, called For Life, shows the story of Aaron Wallace. The protagonist, Aaron, happens to be in jail because of being framed by someone. But the whole story is how harsh the conditions are with an innocent person even. And we see how Aaron has a very interesting warden who allows the family visit to happen at tables where they can reconnect with the inmate. Now, aside from seeing the desperate situation Aaron's going through, Aaron wants to be a lawyer and manages to pass the bar while being in prison. But that path is filled with obstacles. Now, instead of giving him an incentive, it's taking the incentive away. For people like Aaron, and many people are like this in prisons, we're faced again with this dilemma. Are we really fighting crime with our present prison and police structure? Or are we really fooling ourselves? This isn't fighting crime. This is being soft on crime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. When we look at the holistic approach to the conversation, what we're talking about, in this day and age, we're talking about economic equality. And because of the inequality that exists, we need these programs to help support people in having the opportunities that other people have, and as a normal birthright, or happen to be where they live, or the family that they grew up in, or so there are needs for these kind of programs to really shift the way people think and the way people operate and the way people, carve out a living. So you're absolutely right. The Republicans are soft on crime.
So every dollar we spend on helping the police get more military equipment and increase jail expenditures, what we're really doing is creating a scenario where we're taking the inmate away from reconnecting with society we're creating a fertile ground for new crime. So,
For
if
recidivism, because you're putting them back into the same environment. You haven't given them any additional tools to earn a living. And so what are they going to do? They're going to go back to the thing that got them in jail the first time, which is crime, because that's what they know to do. That's what they've been trained, even if they have an interest in doing something different.
So I guess the wrap up of this particular conversation is the fact that let's not be fooled by slogans about fighting crime. Let's look into where does crime come from. Let's see who really is soft on crime.
Absolutely.
Well, if you like what you've seen, join us at Facebook. Look for community and social change. Glenn?
Very good. Thanks, Tom. Great conversation.
Thank you, Glenn.